The British Post Office scandal is one of the most shocking miscarriages of justice in recent British history. It wasn't about a single bad decision or a rogue employee. It was a systemic failure, hidden behind the hum of everyday life that destroyed lives and ruined careers. At the heart of it was a technology called Horizon, and the people who trusted it the most, the subpostmasters and subpostmistresses, ended up paying the heaviest price.
Welcome to Doc Does Financial History, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks.
To understand why the scandal unfolded, imagine the world of a sub-postmaster. These were ordinary people running local post offices in towns and villages across the United Kingdom. They were the face of the post office to the public. They sold stamps, handled pensions, and balanced accounts. Many had done the job for decades, treating it not just as a career, but as a vital community service. The post office was supposed to be a safe, reliable institution, and yet, for years, it became the opposite for hundreds of people. The problem began in the late 1990s when the post office introduced Horizon, an accounting system designed to track transactions and manage accounts across the network. On paper, it was revolutionary. It promised efficiency, accurate reporting, and seamless integration with banking and retail functions. But Horizon came with hidden flaws. Software bugs, incorrect transaction processing, and unexplained shortfalls in accounts created a perfect storm. The post office didn't see this as a technical problem, they saw it as evidence of wrongdoing. Sub-postmasters began reporting discrepancies they couldn't explain. Accounts were showing missing funds that simply didn't exist. And instead of investigating Horizon, the post office assumed the people running the offices were at fault. They were accused of theft, false accounting, and fraud. Some were suspended, some were prosecuted, and many were jailed. Lives were upended. Marriages broke down, homes were lost, careers were ruined, and all of it was based on a flawed piece of software. The story is staggering because it defies common sense. The people who knew the system best, the sub-postmasters, were being punished for mistakes they didn't make. They had no motive, no history of theft, yet they were treated as criminals. Court after court sided with the post office, often ignoring expert testimony about Horizon's technical problems. The legal battles were long, stressful, and exhausting. Many sub-postmasters were not only fighting for their freedom and reputations, but for the truth itself. Take the case of Seema Misra, a sub-postmistress from Birmingham. She noticed that her Horizon accounts were showing shortfalls that didn't exist. Despite her protests and evidence, the post office prosecuted her. She faced years of legal battles, public shame, and personal hardship. Cases like hers were repeated hundreds of times. The post office's unwavering trust in Horizon and simultaneous disbelief in their own staff created a climate of fear and injustice. The problem was not just legal or technical, it was institutional. The post office had a culture of secrecy and defensiveness. Internal reports highlighted the issues with Horizon, but they were often ignored. Management prioritized defending the institution over investigating possible system errors. Employees were told to assume guilt, not question the software. The power imbalance meant that ordinary sub-postmasters with limited resources and little legal support stood almost no chance against a government-backed organization. Over the years, whistleblowers tried to bring the truth to light. Experts in accounting and IT repeatedly warned that Horizon could not be trusted for legal or disciplinary decisions. Independent audits revealed bugs, missing data, and errors that could easily explain the alleged shortfalls. Yet, the post office continued to press charges. Some have described it as a Kafkaesque nightmare, a system so rigid and blind to error that reality itself seemed irrelevant. The human cost was staggering. Hundreds of people were convicted, some serving prison sentences for crimes they didn't commit. Businesses went bankrupt, personal savings were wiped out, and reputations were destroyed. Psychological trauma was widespread. Many victims struggled with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. Families were torn apart.
For decades, the post office's insistence on Horizon's infallibility created a culture of fear and mistrust that lasted long after the initial prosecutions. It wasn't until investigative journalism and persistent campaigning by victims and their families that the truth began to emerge. Reporters from outlets like the BBC and The Guardian uncovered the depth of the problem, exposing the post office's refusal to acknowledge Horizon's flaws. Parliamentary committees began to scrutinize the issue, demanding accountability. Slowly, public pressure forced action, though not before immense damage had been done. The turning point came in the late 2010s. Legal reviews overturned many wrongful convictions, and courts began to recognize that Horizon was unreliable. In December 2019, the appeal court quashed the convictions of 39 former subpostmasters and subpostmistresses, highlighting how flawed evidence from Horizon had been treated as infallible. The judgment called the prosecutions an affront to justice and noted the devastating impact on the victims' lives.
Beyond individual cases, the scandal exposed systemic problems in oversight and governance. The post office's approach showed how institutions can fail when they prioritize reputation over truth. Accountability was fragmented, whistleblowers were ignored, and independent audits were insufficient. The scandal demonstrated the danger of relying on complex technology without transparency or proper checks. In this sense, the British Post Office scandal is not just a story about software. It's a cautionary tale about power, bureaucracy, and the human consequences of institutional overreach. The government eventually launched an inquiry, tasked with uncovering the full extent of the scandal. Victims were given compensation, though many argued it was insufficient for the years of suffering endured. The inquiry revealed that more than 700 sub-postmasters had been affected, with the total number of convictions and prosecutions far exceeding initial estimates. Families, communities, and small businesses were caught in the crossfire, and the post office's credibility was severely damaged. What makes this scandal particularly striking is its timeless relevance. The combination of technology, institutional arrogance, and human vulnerability is not unique to the post office. In the modern world, similar failures can happen wherever complex systems intersect with real lives. Whether it's banking, healthcare, or government services, the lessons of Horizon, the danger of over-reliance on untested technology, the perils of ignoring whistleblowers, and the human cost of institutional inflexibility remain crucial. Moreover, the psychological dimension cannot be overlooked. The sub-postmasters were ordinary people, trusted members of their communities, yet they were made to feel criminal simply because the system failed. The fear, shame, and isolation they experienced underscore the need for accountability, transparency, and ethical governance. Institutions wield immense power, and the post office scandal is a stark reminder that mismanagement can have catastrophic human consequences. In addition to the individual injustices, the scandal raised questions about corporate and governmental responsibility. The post office was effectively acting with the weight of the state, using its authority to pursue prosecutions while ignoring evidence that contradicted its narrative. This imbalance demonstrates how legal and organizational structures can amplify harm when oversight is inadequate and when the culture prioritizes self-preservation over truth. The British Post Office scandal also changed the conversation about how technology should be used in public service. Horizon was intended as a tool for efficiency, but without rigorous testing, transparency, and avenues for challenge, it became a weapon of injustice. Experts now argue that technology in high-stakes environments must be auditable, accountable, and designed with safeguards for human error. The post office scandal serves as a case study in what can go wrong when these principles are ignored. By the time the scandal reached its peak, the post office had become a symbol of institutional failure. Public trust eroded, reputations were tarnished, and the lives of hundreds were irreparably harmed. Yet, through investigative journalism, legal advocacy, and relentless campaigning by victims, justice slowly emerged. Compensation schemes, legal exonerations, and the ongoing inquiry aim to restore some measure of fairness, though they can never fully undo the personal and social damage caused.
The lesson from the British Post Office scandal is unmistakable. Institutions must be accountable, technology must be transparent, and human lives must come before reputation. The immense harm caused shows how rigid bureaucracy, blind faith in flawed systems, and weak oversight can spiral into widespread injustice. It stands as a warning for every organization with power over ordinary people. Today, the scandal is not only remembered for its injustice, but for its impact. The subpostmasters have become voices for reform, proving that systems must serve people. Transparency, accountability, and human-centered oversight are not optional. They are essential safeguards for a fair society. The British Post Office scandal is a story of lives upended, trust broken, and justice delayed. It is a testament to resilience as victims fought to reclaim their names and their dignity. It is a story of systemic failure as a trusted institution failed to protect the people it was meant to serve. And it is a story with lessons for the future, a reminder that technology and bureaucracy must never overshadow accountability and humanity. When you look at the modern world of automated systems, complex software, and bureaucratic oversight, the echoes of Horizon are everywhere. The scandal teaches us that blind trust in technology, coupled with rigid institutions, can have devastating consequences. It reminds us to question, to audit, and to prioritize the human impact of decisions. The names of those affected, the careers destroyed, and the lives changed forever serve as a stark reminder: systems are only as just as the people who oversee them. The British Post Office scandal continues to unfold, revealing both deep institutional failures and remarkable human resilience. As investigations progress and compensation evolves, it stands as a warning about flawed systems and unchecked authority. Ordinary people were caught in extraordinary injustice, yet their persistence brought truth to light. This story reminds us why accountability matters.
If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with others, and subscribe for more content.